Good evening. I'd like to call to order a special town council meeting for April 24th, 2014 for the 2014-15 budget workshops. We'll begin by rising for a moment of silence. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah. How are you? Okay.
And we will begin. We are looking at social service contributions this evening, page 44 in the budget booklet. We'll begin with the Spanish community of Wallingford. I'm sorry, would you please call the roll?
Certainly.
Thank you.
I was about to remind you. Fishbein.
Here.
Laffin.
Here.
Letourneau.
Here.
Mansfield. Here. Parisi.
Here.
Russo.
Here.
Sullivan.
Here.
Testa.
Here.
Chairman Cervoni.
Here. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Please, for the record, remind us who you are, even though we know.
I'm Maria Harlow, Executive Director of the Spanish Community of Wallingford.
And I'm Steve Knight, the Vice President of the Board.
Thank you for coming, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank you for the tandem voice message that you left me. I enjoyed that very much.
And we thank you for, again, for being the first this evening to be able to come before you.
Do you have any introductory remarks?
Well, just we want to thank the town for their continued support for our agency. We are very grateful of the relationship that we have. This is another very good year for us. And we could never be where we are without the support of the town. So we thank you.
And we thank you for the services you provide to the community. You know, it's a mutual relationship, I think, that we both benefit from. So we'll entertain questions from the councilors. I see Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Nice to see you again. In our packet, all we have is a letter with 2 lines. We don't have your budget. Is there?
Well, let me just quickly go through that, Craig, just so you have it. Our budget this year, which includes the town cash contribution, as well as some in-kind contributions, including the facility. Our budget is $319,000.
That's expenditure budget or income budget?
It's
the 0-line budget?
Yeah, it's income and expenses. It's what our budget is. I'm not sure I understand the question. In other words, we are hoping to, certainly we are budgeted to take in a total income of $319,000, and we've balanced our expenses similarly.
Okay, I understand that. Just as I sit up here, the way I look at this is, you know, your agency does great things. It's not a question. It's whether or not I, for one, feel it appropriate to grant tax dollars to a particular agency, and that's why usually I ask for budgets. How much money, when I look at things like that, I consider if the money wasn't there, what would be the effect upon the agency? And certainly some agencies are able to show a need over other agencies. And without having a budget in front of me last year, I would expect as you went into the year, it was a zero-line budget also. You were expecting to have a certain amount of revenue and to spend all of it. And the result of last year, what was that result? Did you have money left over?
Well, let me explain a couple of things. The way that a nonprofit in this environment wants to operate, and I think this is to your point. We received two substantial grants, or the town of Wallingford receives two substantial grants from the state of Connecticut. At one time, that was probably 95% of the money that went through the agency. And with that money, we provided a set of social service referral programs based on the requirements of those two state grants. About 4 years ago, we reconstituted the board, and 4 or 5 years ago, I should say, and embarked on an effort to try to temper that dependence on those two state grants by raising money of our own. And we have, frankly, been fairly successful with that. We've achieved several successful fundraisers. We've gone out and secured grants for certain programs and whatnot. And with that, we have grown the agency. The town of Wallingford has for years provided, in fact, the town of Wallingford at one time, prior to this, these two large grants, provided more money than the town provides now. The town, as we mentioned, provides a facility, which we are extremely grateful for, and the support, and the cash contribution is $10,000. $10,000 will buy a lot of programming with the kind of budget that we do. We'd love to have you come by the agency and meet with Maria in some afternoon and see just where the town's money is spent, because I think you'd be very pleased with what you see.
Once again, not questioning what the agency does, looking at whether or not it's appropriate to use tax dollars for the agency. So you got to pardon me, I've been in hearings all day, and I would have objected a while ago, but the question was, last year, you had a certain amount of income, and did you use all of that money, or did you have money left over? That was the question.
And I didn't answer that. You're very correct. Maria, if I may, we did not. We came pretty close to our budget. We budgeted pretty carefully, but by securing more grants and some additional funds through fundraising, we were able to probably come out, I think, with 13, or what was the total amount of the overage, if you will.
Like 16,000.
What I did want to say.
So there was $16,000 that was unexpended from last year.
Right, but let me, and I should have said this in the first place to answer your question, and you were right to call me on it. The environment that most nonprofits face now, especially those that are dependent on state of Connecticut or federal grants, that is a very tenuous relationship with your major funders. If we were able to confidently know that we had a continuous revenue stream from the state of Connecticut, perhaps that $10,000 overage or $16,000 overage would not seem to be proper. Having said that, however, every nonprofit that we've dealt with and worked with in this state is trying to build up some kind of sensible cash reserve to prepare them for the possibility that this funding will be severely curtailed. And every year we go through this. So from a cash standpoint, you may look at the $10,000 in cash, that the town of Wallingford gives the Spanish community of Wallingford. And in a given snapshot year, it might seem that we didn't spend the money. But on the long term, for the survival of the organization, we have got to build up at least 3 to 6 month reserve. Every planner, every consultant we've ever dealt with having to do with nonprofit finances has warned every one of us over and over and over again. If you are dependent on government for your money, be prepared. Get yourself prepared for the day when that money stops.
So coming back to my introductory remark, which I've got to look at, or I look at as one, what will be the effect upon the agency if they don't get this money? What I'm hearing is, at least with regard to last year, if you did not get the $10,000 from the town last year, it would have had no effect upon your services last year, because you had $16,000 left over at the end of the year.
That is fair to say that. However, I think that you have to look at it in a different way. You have to look at the entire work of the agency, because it's not only it's not only talking about that particular amount of money. It's talking about the sustainability of the agency and our capacity to continue offering our services year after year after year. So yes, this year we have money left that we can put in the bank, so we can make sure that if tomorrow the state of Connecticut tells us, I cannot fund you anymore, we don't have to close our doors and stop offering our services.
But
from 4 years to now, our agency, the amount of people that we serve has almost tripled. And that comes with a lot of work and a lot of resources that we need to, that we need to secure. When you have an agency when you have an agency that is doing the right thing, we are secure, we get our government funds, but we also seek grant money. We work in fundraisers. We really work very hard to bring our sources of income to make sure that we're sustainable. I think that the work that type of work that we do should always be supported, because
I don't disagree. Personal responsibility is one of my favorite terms, and for every agency to go out and do their own fundraiser, kudos. I'm not faulting you at all, but just take a second and look at the way if what I'm hearing is that I'm going to give money and it's going to be put in a bank account in case of what happens, is a little disconcerting.
it is a very likely case. It's not a remote case. It's
Well,
every single year the state sends a letter to the town saying that our funds are being eliminated from the budget,
and
from the state.
just understand that everybody's treated the same with me. So
I know, no, we already have a couple of years of experience.
and I don't usually ask questions unless I know the answer, and I'm going to tell you that I have a lot of answers. I don't get a lot of documents when I do FOI requests, so I went and got some documents myself. Is it fair to say that over the last few years, there's been surpluses of about $15,000 each year?
Not each year, no. The first year was probably, I don't know.
What's the first
I don't know,
year?
very little, and I will have to get back to you.
What's
I will be happy to.
What's the first year, 4 years ago?
Since we started our fundraising efforts, yes. And we can provide that information.
How much is currently in reserves from surpluses?
We have about,
$30,000 maybe.
and that is,
That is right around 2 months' worth of our expenditures, or less, of our cash expenditures. So it's just proper, sensible planning to have reserves. And the fact that we didn't take the $10,000 from the town of Wallingford and say, okay, earmark it for program A, does not mean that the money wasn't both necessary and used properly.
I'm not questioning that at all. It's,
Well, your question, with good reason, because you're up there, you're questioning whether we need the $10,000 and what would it do if we didn't have the $10,000.
and I'm just looking at the history, because I did get a tax return
Uh-huh.
that shows some surpluses, and that's what I'm asking about.
Yeah, Craig, not to interrupt you, but what we've struggled to do for the last 5 years is stop living hand to mouth.
And I appreciate that. And you didn't do fundraisers before, and now you do. Because the last 3 years or so, you've been doing
Yes.
fundraisers, and I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I'm looking at it from a
Yeah.
different aspect. That's
And there are other programs that we've been able to, that Maria has been able to design and implement because of the success of these fundraisers and our grant search. But in addition to that is the $10,000 from the town of Wallingford. And that's why I know this is, I invite you to come down some afternoon.
I've been
and
to
speak
SCOW.
to the Adelante kids, for instance, and really see right in front of you where that $10,000 go.
Once
You
again,
would love that.
not questioning what the agency does. I'm looking at wants and needs. That's all. There's things that we aren't doing in this town that we can't fund in this town. We're getting inundated with contacts about certain expenditures or not, and I'm just analyzing everything. And when I'm looking at an appropriation, and in effect it went to fund a surplus, it's of reflection and concern.
I understand your position, but in the same way, this is an opportunity for us to explain why the money, what do we do with that money, and what's the impact in our community. We have tons of ways to show the impact of every single cent that those $10,000 bring to the Wallingford community. And I don't want to overextend, but should I had the opportunity to show the outcomes of every single program or every single service that we offer, you will be really very impressed.
I have been impressed.
And happy. You will double the contribution.
Once again, for the umpteenth time, not questioning what the
I know,
agency
I
does.
understand, but you need to know that this is a great investment. You don't invest money only on people on projects that are struggling. You invest money in things that are going to give you great return. This gives you great return.
I'm also looking at, for instance, WCI is going to be here tonight. They asked for $10,000 for their facade renovation program. They got half of that. I've got an agency before us, and you're not the only one who has gotten money and it's being banked, and I understand. But those are the things that I got to look at. So.
And one additional thing, the money that we put in the bank is money that we raise from our fundraisers. It's not the money that comes from the state of Connecticut. It's not money that comes from the town. We make sure, because for us it's really very important to know, we don't expend every single cent that comes. We know that the money that comes in pays our expenses, and we continue having the doors open, and our fundraisers are our bread and butter. And it takes a lot of work and time from everybody and from all of you that come to our events and support our events, and that is the money that gets put on the side as savings for our own sustainability.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next up, Councilor Laffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a fair warning to everybody in the audience, Councilor Fishbein does not tire as the evening goes on. He'll ask the same questions over and over again to everybody, because he's fair like that. I do feel that SCOW's contribution to Wallingford warrants the $10,000. If you needed a little more, I would probably fight for a little more. I don't find it disconcerting that you have money left over. Why would we punish you for having money left over or fundraising? You can't plan on how much your fundraisers are going to bring in. Maybe they don't do as well as they did last year or whatever it is. I don't know what else we would use the building for. and when I talk about the contribution to the town, I'm not even talking about specifically the Spanish community. I mean the town in general. I feel like what's special about SCOW is that they reach the entire town by introducing a different culture than maybe people are expecting or are used to. So I think that's valuable, and I think that it helps create a more cohesive community. I know as the years go on, you've been trying to break away from state dependence and whatnot. Any idea, and it's okay if you don't know, do you have a plan, or are you talking about having a plan of how many years it would take, or what type of events or income it would take to break away from that sort of dependency?
We need to continue being able to raise the equivalent of the money that comes from the state, that is a little under $120,000, it's $115,000. So we need to make sure that we have that type of money, and $16,000 is not near.
No, you're not even close.
It's not near.
Forget our 10,000.
And for that, and on top of that, we need to make sure that every single year we bring that exact amount of money. So it's very tricky when you do it with fundraisers and when you do it with events. I mean, some years you can have great years, very successful events. Some others, maybe not. So.
Let me just add something a little more general regarding nonprofits. And I've been speaking in generalities, and Maria's been addressing the specifics. And I'm also the Volunteer Fund Development Director. So you can see that they're hobbled a bit by having they're a little short of talent in that department. But regardless, it's an interesting study to be involved in nonprofits. And we've attended many conferences where we're learning fund development skills and a lot of other skills. And as I mentioned earlier, every single nonprofit is feeling it. They're feeling the change in the attitude toward the state of Connecticut, of course, is going broke. We know that. And there will come a day when social programs such as this come under the knife. We are preparing for that. But besides that, the number of nonprofits in this state has doubled, literally doubled in the last 10 years. There's a nonprofit 501c3 for practically anything. And we're all competing for the same, we're all eating at the same dish. So we are making as much effort as we can to cushion ourselves, if you will, to some degree. I don't think Maria's going to be real happy with me saying that we have built up the reserves, but the fact is that we are being a sustainable, intelligent, long-term, forward-thinking organization that is much more valuable to the town of Wallingford by being healthy financially, and we are in an environment where it is more and more difficult, and we are facing more and more competition for the same dollars. So the $10,000 indeed is money well spent just for the sustainability of the organization.
No, sorry, Maria, did you? No, and I agree. How much did you guys raise you had two major fundraisers this year, correct? Am I right? Is the golf?
Yeah, well, we had the wine tasting.
Right.
That's an example. For example, last year we raised about $13,000. This year we cleared about $5,000.
Okay.
So that is, we need
That's
to really make
significant
sure.
decrease, yeah.
Exactly. So that is what is so tricky, so scary.
Okay. And then and I know you're trying new, like you tried the golf tournament, was new this year.
Yes.
Are you doing that again, or was that a one-time?
No, it's Newport Steel is preparing their second annual golf tournament.
Why, we're glad you asked, Tom. Mark your calendars. October 10th. There's the Newport golf tournament is going to take place, and our third Noche de Musica concert at,
Right, that's right.
at the Paul Mellon Arts Center.
On the
So,
same day.
On the same day.
On the same day.
One during the day, during the morning, and the early afternoon, and the other in the evening.
'Cause that was usually during the summer, right?
Yeah, but-
It was usually a weekend I was away, but.
Yeah.
okay.
Yep. Well, that's why we switched the time.
And that'll be at Choate? Yeah,
At
thank you,
Choate,
thank you,
yes.
finally. I send you guys all those emails. You're just tired of hearing me say it, no, I can't buy any tickets. So they're all gonna, one's gonna be at Choate again, or
Yes.
the Musica de Noche?
Well, the golf tournament is going to be at Lyman Orchards, and Noche de Música is going to be at the Paul Mellon Arts Center.
Well, I wish you guys the best of luck with that, and I don't know if I need to disclose for ethical reasons. My children took Spanish classes at SCOW during the summer, and they enjoyed it, so.
Good, good.
Thank you. It was a trial. I mean, we're definitely focusing now on offering only a few programs that we're going to be very good at. But we thank you for bringing your kids to our trial Spanish class for children.
Are you doing it again this year?
No, for this year we're just getting specialized in the ones that we have been offering for a few
That's
years.
fair, you're discontinuing or not going forward with programs that you feel you can't do as well. Okay, thank you, that's it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may interrupt just for a minute to introduce the person that, Patricia Simbola, our board chair.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Continuing, Councilor Testa.
Thank you. Good evening.
Welcome back.
Yeah. You didn't do too bad of a job on pronouncing that Noche de Musica, Steve. Work with him on that. Actually, if this would be appropriate, I was really just wanted to ask for a bit of a clarification from one of my fellow councilors. Not a question directly of this organization. I suspect there might be a similar vein of questioning as the night goes on of various organizations, and I would ask Councilor Fishbein, if I understand perhaps the reasoning or rationale of what you're questioning would be safe to say that your determination of need and desire to see the budgets would be based on whether or not our contribution would allow an organization's budget to zero out, so to speak. In other words, is that kind of what you're thinking? Because it does help me to understand, since the questioning is going in that direction.
I think that's one way of looking at it. My first budget up here, if you recall, because you predated me up here, we just used to get a sheet with the appropriation, and I had asked going forward that we get a budget from any entity that was not directly related to the town. I wanted to see what the money was going to be used for, as well as what would be the effect upon the agency if they didn't get those funds. Unfortunately, over a couple of years, the compliance with that request, although I don't renew it and send out letters and all that stuff, there was a letter, I think, the first year. We don't get that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just looking for oversight. I think we have a duty. That's
Right. That answers the question as to why they want to see the budget. But I guess for example, in this particular situation, if it was shown that without the town's contribution of $10,000, SCOW would be $10,000 in the hole, that would be the demonstration of need that perhaps would satisfy you?
absolutely.
And other than that, that's leading to what your questions are?
No, just
Okay.
not that but what I've heard here tonight is also of satisfaction to me, in that looking at their budget over the year, which I didn't have coming to the table. I didn't know what their income was for the year.
Right.
And then the representation, we need a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, just so that we got some sort of cushion. That's of solace to me. Okay. But not knowing, I know there's about 40 grand in reserves. I was able to figure that out. Not knowing what their annual expenditures were, I couldn't put those pieces together.
Okay.
So.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, for that. And thank you for being here. I have no questions of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Councilor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Can you just help us identify what your population is now? You indicated you've tripled the base that you serve, and just understanding, I've seen your activities in skill building and literacy and education. You span multi-generations in terms of what you do. You deal with the babies, you deal with the children, you deal with the parents, you deal with seniors, the adults trying to get jobs. Many of your populations are unacculturated or first generation, so you're dealing with probably multi-generational literacy issues. The children often seem to be English speaking and the parents are developing those skills. So your safety net in terms of what the town is investing in you, I see you as a safety net because you're a bridge to building a part of our population that truly needs help in all pieces, in all facets as they learn our country and culture. There is absolutely a piece of education on all levels to getting them ready for whatever level they're at. So can you just help us quantify your population? You mentioned triple. Can you help us baseline how many people are you helping with this seed money of 10,000?
It used to be, 4 years ago, it was around 340 people. Now it's close to 1,000 individuals. And the great majority, 95 or more %, are Wallingford residents.
And based on our demographics, just looking at U.S. Census data, I know this is one of the fastest growing populations across our state, across our town. This isn't going to stop.
No.
The population isn't going to decrease. You have a many countries are represented in Spanish speaking, we know that. Many continents are represented. That spreads your resources differently, right? So as you start to grow your programming, can you comment on how many staff you now have, or what your personnel, how much help do you have at this point? I know you do I know you all do everything.
We have 3 full-time employees, and we have 2 part-time employees, plus 2 volunteers. Well, many more volunteers, but we have our music director is a volunteer, our development director is a volunteer. And, well, many other youth volunteers and instructors that are volunteers too.
And I think, with our fellow counselors' comments, I think it's important that we benchmark each of these pieces every year. But I see you as doing so much with that in a population that needs to be prepared in literacy and job skill building at every level, that it's something, if you weren't doing it, the town would have to do something. I mean, many of these components in our discussion tonight is a safety net to get to somewhere else better. And again, from a quality of life. And if I look at the graduation rates, again, when we look at subgroups in our school district, we have a variance, and the achievement gap is historically inferior in many of those subgroups, and I see your work as helping to complement that on that level, and then,
thank you.
And then with the adult population. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
The floor is still yours.
I had one more question. I'm sorry. And in looking at, could you quantify the percentage of children that you serve in that close to 1,000? Is it
it's
benchmark?
about,
I mean, is it a tenth, a fifth?
No, it's about
Smallest.
150 to 100 between, including the little ones and the youth.
Okay. And I just wanted to say thank you for all your services and your partnership. And congratulations, Mrs. Harlow was recently recognized in the community for her partnership and advocacy, and it's well deserved.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. Did I understand correctly that your music director is a volunteer?
Yes.
And that whole program is not financially supported at all? No. The reason why I ask is because your mariachi band has had some pretty impressive successes in terms of the stages they've been on and the performers they've opened for and the like. And I think that's notable that you're putting on such an impressive music program with no money.
No, she's absolutely, she fully volunteers her time. We do charge a small fee to the families, And this per family, it's $25 per family, whether you have one child or 4 children. That help us a little bit with the, materials, things like that. But it's more because we want people really invested in the program, and we don't believe on everything for free. It's important that people invest a little bit on their own.
And that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Next is Councilor Sullivan, followed by Councilor Parisi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. Thank you both for coming before us. Personally, if it was up to me, you wouldn't need to be here because I would approve your budget, and I would approve all of your budgets. We're looking at a budget total of $151,778,562 for the town, of which $1,083,925 is set aside for your social programs. That's about 0.7% of the total budget. I look at this page, I don't have any problem at all because it sends kids to camp, it teaches people to read, it embraces the Latin community, it provides a place of burial for Wallingford citizens, it provides a place for our seniors. This entire page is made up of organizations basically run by volunteers. Yes, there are some paid people on it, but mostly made up of volunteers. To have all of you here tonight, I'm sorry. There are some counselors who feel it's necessary to question you on your budgets. I don't. I'm okay with it. The only comment I would have to my friends on Wallingford Public Celebrations is please spend your money. Please don't come in with $2,500 carried over. Spend your money. That's why we give it to you. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your good work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Councilor Parisi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, all. I guess I have probably a greater appreciation for what you are trying to do and what you have done. I've served on your board for 4 or 5 years. I remember the days when you didn't have 2 pesetas to rub together. And you've come a long way from those days. And I, for one, don't feel you should be penalized. If you have put a very solid business plan, and I know that you brought in a very successful fundraiser from out of state because he's your brother, and he has to work for nothing under duress. But having those inside views, again, makes me appreciate what you've done. And I know that your goal, and I'm going to go out on a limb, is to break away from any financing if you can. And I'd say you're well on your way to that. Your association with Nucor is almost a dream come true.
Yes, it is.
And the good things, your mariachi program is the finest in the state, maybe in the country, I don't know.
Maybe. It's
But
the
you've
only one
done
in New
some
England.
beautiful things with it, and I was happy to take part in it. So I agree with Councilor Sullivan. It's painful, but I will. That I don't know why you're here. I think we should say thank you.
Thank you.
I said it's painful to agree with you. But I think you should keep going on the track that you're on, and I wish you much success, and hopefully I'll be able to get back in the saddle with you guys very soon.
Good. Thank you, Bob.
Thank
That's
you,
Thank
Bob.
you.
very
And
encouraging.
thanks
Thank
for
you.
your good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other
Thanks,
questions?
Mr.
Or
Chairman.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from councilors for the Spanish community of Wallingford? Thank you very much for your information for us, and thank you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
See you Monday.
Enjoyed the opportunity to talk about SCOW.
Thank you very much. Up next, we'll be discussing the Wallingford Center Inc., and with that, the Wallingford Center Inc. facade program.
How are you?
evening.
Good evening.
Welcome. For the benefit of the record, remind us who you are.
I'm Joan Ives Parisi, Treasurer of Wallingford Center Inc.
Liz Landau, Executive Director.
Stephen Lazarus, President.
Ken Ryan, Volunteer Consultant.
Thank you all. It's kind of redundant in your position, isn't it? But thank you. Do you have any introductory remarks for us?
We've had a good year.
It's a good start. Thank you. Questions and comments from councilors. Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's start where we ended off last year. Last year, I had asked to receive a copy of your minutes for the prior 3 years, and that request was met with silence. What is the situation on that?
We are not a municipal agency, and it's my understanding that we're not required to provide minutes when requested.
So I'll be filing an action with Freedom of Information next week, because I've spoken with them and they disagree.
Okay.
So is there a legal opinion that we're
Actually, you probably, and we'll continue to discuss our funding, you know we don't have funding for legal advice. I think that perhaps a first step would be for us to take advantage of the town's law department and ask them, and we would certainly act as they told us we should act.
So it's been a year since my request, and Freedom of Information Act says reasonable period of time, and I think that's long past. So I'm hearing that we just haven't addressed it in the legal arena.
We have not gotten a legal opinion on this. That's absolutely correct, and we haven't because we frankly don't want to spend the money for it. I would just encourage you to proceed with this in the friendliest of manners possible. I think that might be to check with the legal department for the town, and as I said, we would do whatever they told us we should do.
Well, as I said, I'll be filing the action next week, and that's not appropriate. But anyway, is there some reason that we're not entitled to these minutes? Other than the perpetuation that...
We are, as was said minutes ago, we are largely composed of volunteers. I have pretty close to no patience for spending my time doing paperwork. I want to improve the downtown. I don't want to do anything else. And so if we honor your request for minutes, I can tell you that there are 30 or 40 other requests coming down the line for the same thing. We don't want to open that door. It's not about you in particular. It's about what happens when we say, we are open, we'll do whatever you want, call us, we'll take any amount of time, we'll do whatever you want, we'll give you whatever you need. It's an ugly picture for a volunteer organization to have to comply with that level of freedom of information, as you're calling it. And so it's not that we want to be unfriendly. It's certainly not that we're irresponsible. It's that we'd like to keep our eye on the ball. We have a limited number of hours. We want to do what we think is important.
Okay. I'm not going to, talking about the budget, but anyway. Looking at the budget that you submitted as backup to your request for this year, I'm trying to understand what the columns mean. The first one says total, the second one being office. And where I got a little lost was under the programs and operations line, under total, it says 84,650, and there's other lines to the right of that. Am I to understand that the other lines to the right are the broken down and then to the left? Okay, so it's...
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So moving down, what is we have revenue, $72,000 of revenue, programs and operations under office. Can you explain that?
Under revenue,
Yeah,
programs, the office,
yes. What does the office column mean?
I think I could answer that for you, Mr. Fishbein. We just tried to show the amount of revenue that would be required to run the organization. If you look at the expenses down below, under office, you'll see that pretty much it's the full expenses of running the organization. It's everything that is not associated with either Celebrate Wallingford, facade improvement, et cetera. And you'll see that the town's contribution of requested of 84,000, 72,000 of that will be allocated to running the organization, all of its expenses.
Okay, then why does it show as a revenue?
it shows as a revenue because it's the money the town gives us.
It's broken down.
And then it's broken down in expenses.
Okay, so perhaps there's another column needed showing where it's coming from. I got it. Office doesn't apply really to revenue at all. It's operations to run the office. It's really only applicable to the expenses, not to the revenue.
Correct.
Okay, I understand that now. Thank you.
It's coming out of that revenue that we're getting from the.
Yeah, it's just, you understand,
Yep.
just
It's
by the category, I just couldn't figure that out. I got it now. Just running down the line, the facade improvement program, I know last year and traditionally you've gotten $5,000 in there. Did you expend the $5,000 last year?
Yes, and we've expended this year's already. I have people ready for anything that would come after July 1st.
Okay, which would be against the
Years.
$5,000. Can you just tell us what facades the $5,000 last year was used for?
Sure. Vinny's Deli, we did all his, repainted and did all that. Harriman took over right next to Serenity Spa, which they repainted and everything to match Serenity Spa, and they put a whole new sign and everything, so it's done in the exact same vein, and we were very receptive to that. Hit or Miss, which is down the street, repainted and did all new windows and everything to the front of theirs.
That's the pawn shop?
That's the pawn shop. And a new sign. And they did a blade sign, which we're trying to get as many businesses to do as possible because we just like the blade signs coming. As you're walking down the street, you see the blade signs right in front of you, and we're really supportive of those. And Michael's Trattoria, we'll finish up the rest of the 5,000. He is doing a lot to the facade, which he really needs. That really needs a facelift, and they're doing a lot there.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
It's huge. It really is huge, and we always ask for more and hope that we get it, but I have a list of people that really want to do projects, and it's important.
No, and I appreciate that. And I mean,
I could
said
spend it
before,
like that.
I mean, we have the issue with EDC and the billboard on 91. There's $10,000 for that, which, you know, I think everybody knows my opinion on that whole situation. I would much rather see the money go to
In
a
our own
program like
backyard,
this.
and really.
Absolutely.
And the merchants are very receptive to that, and that little bit of help really makes them want to do the project.
Thank you. The office, going back to the office line, I'm going to page 2. The WCI merchandise is shown as a $1,400 expenditure, but I was unable to call out any revenue. Is that mixed in somewhere?
Some of it is mixed in with Celebrate, and some of it is mixed in with the Garden Market, because those are the two main places that we sell that. That we sell
So it's
the
there,
merchandise.
it's just
there.
part of those lines.
We sell the most of it at Celebrate and at the market. We have a booth at the market as well. I do sell some during the year, but the bulk of it is sold at those two events.
Okay, of the funds that you received last year, because while I got a projection for what we intend this coming year, what was the result of last year's budget? Did you have a surplus?
No, we pretty much we had a little bit left over and we put it into the streetscape. We were able to put lights throughout the whole town at Christmas time because we did have a very successful fundraiser and we did well with the market. I really try to, at the end, if there is money left over, to put it back into the streetscape. So we were able to, everybody was very happy that we were able to have lights on every single pole this year for Christmas, and a lot of that was that we did have some extra money left over, so I really do try to buy more flags. We were also I was able to buy 30 more flags, which just went up yesterday, and you'll see some nice new flags that are up and around. So we really do, if there is anything left over, it goes right back into the streetscape and something that we can use for the town.
How much does WCI currently have in reserves? From prior years?
From prior years?
Prior years. We're gonna make it to June and maybe have very little left over. We're cutting it close.
Because there are hopefully this year, Celebrate will break even, but up until this point, we've had to put monies into Celebrate to break
This year
even.
we were pretty close, though.
Yeah.
Is there any money held in reserves by WCI?
Very little.
I'm hearing very little.
Very little, maybe 2,000. I'm trying to figure out what we're gonna have at the end of June, but we're gonna be close.
Cash savings and investments.
That I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Is there,
We go to the end.
well, I'll tell you,
Mr. Fishbein, from an operating point of view, they're basically running out of a checkbook. And
they're running without a checkbook?
Out of a checkbook.
Okay.
They're operating out of their checkbook.
I
And
happen
if
to.
there is a balance in the checkbook, it's probably well under 5 figures. It's low 4 figures at all, if anything.
And when was the last time it was
We have
$40,000, let's say?
we have
$40,000
Yes.
left over.
left over.
It was before my time.
It was way before my time.
I mean, we do an audit every year. Our accountant does an audit every year.
I got the, your accountant is Anthony DeFilio. Yeah.
Anthony DeFilio.
And I got the tax return for the period ending in 2012, June of 2012. And that shows that there was $32,988 in cash savings and investments.
Is that in January, the end of that year, or is different?
June 30th, 2012, which would be the end of the fiscal year, same calendar as we do. I'll give you you can have this copy. I think it's something that perhaps somebody should look into.
We don't know.
Yeah, I have.
Who's
no
the
idea.
treasurer?
I am, but I give him all the work.
You're rich and you don't know it. Good for you.
Nice to know.
Let's see the date up top. 6/30/2012.
Timing issue?
You can have that.
Could be a timing issue. You only get the.
That's all I had at this time, Mr. Chairman.
We're not sure, by the way, if there's, we'd like to believe there's an explanation for that it could be as Ken Ryan is saying, it could be a matter of when we get the funds from the town or when that was actually computed. So we'll look into it certainly, but we don't believe that we have that amount of money kicking around.
And I hope that we're able to figure this out, but certainly that document that's signed by an accountant is on the same calendar year as the town runs. So it ends June 30th, 2000. That one ends 2012. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Parisi, did you want to note your
Yes,
abstention from
Mr.
this
Chairman,
budget.
I will recuse myself, obviously, from voting on this budget. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next is Councilor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. I just wanted to commend you for the good work that you do on behalf of economic development and community spirit. I think you do immeasurable work for consumer and business across the town. My only question is, as we start to see the train station develop, and as we start to see, some activity that could potentially bring down more traffic into that downtown area, do you have any money or projects earmarked for next year, or would you expect the year after for starting to look at perhaps some additional partnerships with the chamber or some other way of tapping into local businesses that we could help support your work even further? Because there is tremendous opportunity coming down the pipeline. There'll be attention and effort coming down. I just wonder, how do we magnify what you're doing?
Thank you for asking. I gave the shortest of introductions I think you may get for the evening, and I said we had a good year. If I'd elaborated on that, I would have said we had a good year because it's been a year of partnerships. And those partnerships cost the town nothing. It costs the town nothing for us to work more closely with economic development. It costs the town nothing for us to work more closely with the Board of Ed. It costs the town nothing for us to I'd like to be working even more closely with planning and zoning than we have been, so that we can encourage the kind of downtown development that we really would all like to see. We don't need any more money to do that. The volunteers that are on the board, I would like to see a chart of the cross-fertilization of board members that are on WCI's board. We've got, oddly enough, our vice president, Stephen Knight, was just up here for SCOW. I'm newly on the cemetery board, and so anything that even touches anybody that has an interest in the downtown is our friend. And we have gotten more and more active in refining those partnerships, and we'll continue to do so. And it doesn't cost any more money. I appreciate the question. We don't need any more money to do that work.
And I would, again, just compliment you on that, because the seeds that you plant in every one of those partnerships continues to bloom and take on more energy and more life as more projects come down the pike. So again, I just want to lend my kudos to that, because your work is well documented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mansfield. Any other comments, questions from councilors?
If I may.
You may.
Okay, I was not going to, but I will. Hey, I have one question. Your location, is it now permanently at 128 Center Street, so you're out of the old building?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And you have this new program, which I'm very happy about, and this is about the benches. Are we going to see that come to fruition? Say yes, please.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, good, because I'm sure we have plenty of people in town that would love to provide a little lift and replace those benches. Good. Well, you know how much I appreciate your work, and glad you're here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Councilor Testa.
Thank you. I just want to take this opportunity, because some people in town might be watching this meeting, to remind them to pay attention to your gardeners market. And I want to thank you for implementing that. Honestly, this is not exaggerating. I think it's one of the best things that's ever been implemented in this community for so many reasons. And I hope it can flourish. It's just the greatest thing to do on a Saturday in the summer. I wish it could be longer. You know how much I like it. But it promotes so many good things other than the spirit of getting down there and healthy eating and all that great stuff. So the people of Wallingford really need, and I know you advertise it, we try to get people to know about it, but people need to know that that's going on Saturdays during the summer, and it's just a wonderful thing. So congratulations on that, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from councilors? Thank you for your time and patience with us. Thank you for all of your work on behalf of Wallingford Center.
Thank you.
Up next is the Senior Center. Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman.
For the benefit of the record, just remind us who you are.
William Viola, Director of the Wallingford Senior Center, but please call me Bill.
Okay, Bill. Mr. Nunn.
I'm Dick Nunn. I'm a member of the board at the Senior Center.
John Rankin. I'm the treasurer of the board.
Thank you. Do you have any introductory remarks?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to let the council know that Connecticut, unfortunately, or fortunately, is the 7th oldest state in the United States by age. According to the current figures, our population, our aging 65 and over population will increase by 64% by the year 2030. And of course, Americans are living 7 years longer than they did in 1970. So it's mixed news. Along with these increasing numbers, we've heard about the boomers, we've heard about the silver tsunami. You're also aware that Connecticut has embarked on a series of successful policies to reduce the number of people in nursing homes. These people are now back in the community, and many of them are needing services within the community. And the Senior Center here in Wallingford is, of course, the provider of services for the older adults of the town. At our volunteer dinner a week or two ago, where I recognized our 150 to 200 volunteers who put in about 20,000 hours of volunteer work last year, valued, according to figures used by independent sector, at about $450,000 worth of volunteer work. I shared with them that in May of 2001, right before the current building opened, membership stood at 1,812. Today it stands at 4,400, and it grows every day. In fact, the only thing that's saving us is that because we serve older adults, unfortunately, we lose so many. If everybody keeps living longer, we won't be able to handle the volume, frankly. But I think many of you have been in the Senior Center. You've seen the work that we do. I will say that the economy the last few years has been difficult. We see more and more people that are desperate when they come to our doors, looking for fuel assistance, looking for food stamps, help with Medicare, help with Social Security. You know, people coming home from the hospital or from nursing homes needing services, housing, transportation. There's many in our community that are really on limited fixed incomes that really rely on the center, not just for socialization. You hear about all the fun parties we have with the big attendance, and the parking lot is filled, but really some of the most important work we do is done one-on-one with our social worker, with our VNA nurse, with our meal programs, with some of the physicians and the other specialists that we have come in and do screenings, health screenings. So I know I don't have to sell the Senior Center to you, but I like to keep the awareness out there of just you know, the work that we do and how much work we do. And as always, my gratitude for the great resources that the town has provided, you know, starting with the building, starting with the financial support, and just the community support of the Senior Center. And we're very grateful for that. We're grateful to have a great staff and great volunteers. And we do try to give back to the town in many ways. And a lot of those volunteers that I mentioned also give back to the community in many ways. our singers and our dancers go out to all the nursing homes in town and perform. Our knitters and crocheters and quilters knit stuff for people in the veterans hospitals, for the mothers that are in the Chrysalis Center. They're just, you know, the senior center people don't just take everything that they get. They also give back to the community as well as back to the senior center itself. So I just wanted to make that little speech, and I'll stop now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have questions, comments from councilors? Councilor Fishbein.
Good evening, gentlemen. Nice to see you again. You didn't address it in your introductory remarks, but we have a letter in here dated February 19 with regard to a bus.
That's correct.
If you could just explain, it's a $55,000 expenditure on top of your regular operating budget, what that is.
Yeah, basically, we have two buses that were purchased via grant through the transit district. They're 2008 buses. We always had a third vehicle. When I came to the senior center, we had an old van. I don't even know where it came from. We then had another 1998 minibus that was donated to us from Massonicare. When that reached well past the end of its useful life, I was able to procure a 2001 used bus from the transit district for $2,500, which I kind of put in the name of the town because the town maintains it. That bus, that third bus, which we have on the road 2 days a week and also on the road when the other buses have to get oil changes or repair work, that bus is beyond its useful life. It's a 2001 with well over 135,000 miles on it. And the town garage, we all kind of held our breath and invested some money in it and got it through the inspection for the registration renewal back in August. But Roger in the garage doesn't, and I don't believe that we're going to be able to get it through again in August of 2015. So at that time, I approached the mayor. When I approached the mayor regarding getting the bus, I didn't believe there was any grant funding available. However, shortly after the budget was put in, I became aware that there was some grant money out there available through the Southern Connecticut Council of Governments. So I've put together a grant application for 80% of that cost of the bus, and that went up today to the Council on Government for review. It's not an official submission yet. It's due in by May 16th. And we would know by June 30th if we were on the primary list, and we would know by next March if we were going to be awarded. And then we could, if we were fortunate enough, because there's heavy competition for this grant money, there's I forget the number of towns that are competing for it and the number of nonprofits. But if we were fortunate enough to get it, we could receive it next year between, I think, August and October next year or something like that. So I am making the effort to save the town 80% of that amount, but in the meantime, I felt like we had to put in for it because if we don't get the bus, we won't have a bus.
So the total anticipated expenditure based upon state contracted pricing for this bus is the $55,000?
That is correct.
Okay, so the 80% is approximately
41.
Yeah, okay. But in the mayor's budget, if I recall correctly, we have budgeted for the full $55,179.
That's correct. Actually, isn't it funded out? It's taken out. It's a suggestion to fund it out of reserve, right? And the reason is I don't think there's any guarantee that we will get that grant. There's been reductions in the funding. Nonprofits like Easter Seals and others also look for funding of their transportation. So given the unknowns, I think it's best that we are ready with the finances to be able to purchase a bus.
And I respect that because it seems like a need, but am I hearing that we're going to do this anyway and then use the grant as a reimbursement should we get it, or are we holding off until we find out the result of the grant before we do anything?
I would suggest, I think the suggestion is to earmark funds from the CRA funds, and I would suggest we do that. If we need some of those for matches, then it's there. If not, the funds are ready. If it ends up where we have other funding, it doesn't hurt anything.
It wouldn't void the grant if we've already spent the money and then the state finds out about it, that it's a reimbursement. It wouldn't impact the grant?
No, we can apply for a grant even though we would be in a position to purchase the vehicle.
Okay, that answers that.
At least I'm not aware of any reason.
I don't know, because the grant.
I don't think you have to show, there's no means test as far as I know.
They want you to definitely provide the 20% to begin with, but we would definitely investigate that before we went ahead and did the purchase. As I said, by June 30th, we'll at least have an idea. If we're on the priority list, that increases our chances, and we would, but I'm not, as the mayor said, it's very tenuous at best.
Sure, and it seems like this needs to get done sooner rather than later, and I'm just looking at the timeline, and that's all.
But we have to try to save the town money if possible.
I don't disagree at this point. I expect that your budget is a zero-line budget also. That's what I'm seeing, in that you anticipate revenues and your budget anticipates expending all of those revenues. And looking at your budget, I have 2 years. I have the current year, and I have projected for next year. The year that closed out June 30th of 2013, did you have a surplus?
We did. It was around $3,000. Generally speaking, we come out somewhere in that neighborhood, $2,800, $3,600. It was right about $3,000. What we do with that money is we hold it in the current year. In other words, whatever we have left over on June 30th of this year will sit in the bank during that year, but it will be budgeted for the following year's budget as carryover. So when you see in our revenue line that carryover amount, that's from the prior year leftover. So we plow it back in so that it reduces the town.
Yeah, and thank you for that. It's showing a carryover from last year, anticipated carryover.
And it's split between the transportation and the operating. So you'll see like 2,400 or 2,200 in operating and 800 in transportation or something under the carryover on the revenue line.
I don't. I see the carryover town contribution of 2524.
Right, and then
I don't see a carryover from the transportation, but it's a very small number considering your entire budget.
Right, that would be on the second page, under on page 2 of the budget, under receipts. You see cash town contribution, and then carryover fiscal year 12-13. I don't know if you were looking at the same document or not.
No, I'm not. I only have a one-pager.
Okay.
But, the math makes sense, the $800. It's a infinitesimal portion of your budget. So I'm going to take your word on that. Has that been your practice over the past decade?
Yes, in the 11 and a half years that I've been at the senior center, that's what we always have done, and that was the system that was in place when I got there.
And how much money is held in reserves, if any, by the senior center?
Well, we do have an encumbered bequest from the Joseph Hortense family that is...
When you say encumbered bequest, my understanding is there's money being held and it's only the interest that you can use.
Correct.
So you can't use the principal, it's only the interest or portion of the interest.
We're allowed to use 90% of the earned interest, and 10% of the earned interest has to be reinvested into the principal.
And is that shown in your budget as a receipt, as a revenue line item?
No, actually that money goes into that revenue goes into the development account, which is controlled by the Committee on Aging. It's for purchasing, furnishing, and other types of, small capital items.
Okay, and approximately how much is in the development account?
About 40,000 in that neighborhood. I don't have it right in front of me,
About
but it's
8% of your annual operating expense. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next is Councilor Parisi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, all. Bill, I have to say that you're far too modest. I was on this council, as we all know, forever, and I was here when the days weren't that sunny down at the senior center, and it was a pretty dismal and dreary scene. And you came on the scene, and with your appointment, I mean, it was like putting Miracle-Gro on a flower. That place just bloomed right out, and as you said, you're up to 4,000, whatever it is, people. I take part in some of the programs, not many, the men's club, and I've never seen such a vibrant place in my life. I truly, truly mean it. Everybody there's happy, and the people that I talk to tell me a lot of it's because of you, and you do have an outstanding staff, and you have outstanding volunteers, I give you that. But you're the guy that made it work, and I'll say it for you because you can't say it. So I thank you, and this town, I know, thanks you too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to echo Mr. Parisi's words. You have saved lives in this community. You've given dignity to people who are truly, it's a very emotional piece of work of which you provide for this community, and a safety net for so many who have given to this community, for us to be able to give back through your work, your amazing partnership work is unheralded. So I did have a comment, though, or a qualifying comment. I'm not criticizing you. I just want you, for the record, the third van will service those in our community who can't, or are not ambulatory. They can't walk. They need canes. They have walkers. They're getting acute medical care, rehabilitation, door to door. So I did have a comment that I received via email asking why you might need another van when we have a bus service coming through town. If you could, for the public's education, just clarify the growing percentages of people who can't walk to a bus stop. They don't have any other transportation, and you are their lifeline to getting to a store for food or going to the pharmacy for medicine. We are truly dealing with people. You are their lifeline, literally and figuratively. Could you comment on that growing percentage who are literally not ambulatory at this point? And again, ballpark, it's growing, is it 5%, 10%, 50%?
Well, Councilor, I don't have a percentage to put on it. I alluded to some of the reasoning behind it in my opening remarks. I truly believe that people that are in nursing homes today, or people that were in hospitals before, people that are in assisted livings today, or people that were in nursing homes before, people that are in my adult day program now, we have an adult day program, are people that would have been in a nursing home, just 10 years ago. And many of the people that are in our general population. I can just tell you, based on my eyes, that we have more people coming in wheelchairs. The wheelchair lift on the bus is critical. When we have a problem with it, it creates a huge problem. Canes and walkers, yes. A lot of the services, there are paratransit services through the Greater New Haven Transit District. They have the My Ride program and the Regional Ride program. However, people have to live within 3/4 of a mile of a fixed transportation route in order to use that. So if you live in the far ends of town, which is where we go a lot of times to pick people up and bring them to the doctor's office, bring them to the pharmacy, those transportation services don't meet your needs. and there are other services. There's private services out there that charge $20 an hour plus another $7 a mile. There's chair car services that are $70. People that come to the senior center, most of them can't afford that kind of pricing to get to where they need to go. So numbers-wise, it's hard to quantify. We used to, one of the changes that I've observed is that we used to go to like Silver Pond and pick up like 10, 15 people there, and now it's only 3 or 4, and it's more people that are in their homes in the far. So we're doing a lot more of this going to the far ends of town than before, where we used to hit a few of the housing places around town, and so we've actually had years where our total number of rides have decreased slightly, but our mileage has gone way up. So I know that doesn't really answer your exact question, but
no, thank you, it does. I wanted you to, just for the record, the miles, the 3/4 of a mile I don't think is well understood in terms of the limits on some transit opportunities that our community does enjoy, so that does answer the question, so thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the Senior Center? Councilor Sullivan.
Thank you. Hey, Bill, I just turned 55. How soon before I can come down and take advantage of those very economical lunches?
Welcome to the 55 Club, Councilor Sullivan. I'm a member myself, so we have to wait 5 more years before we can become official members. But
all right.
If you come down, and you want to shoot a game of pool or play some bocce, and anybody's welcome to have a meal in our cafe, even if you're not a senior, so.
I better avoid it until I'm 60. I don't want to.
There's no shame.
Anybody think that I'm taking advantage of a situation.
Well, that's all right.
But on the serious note, I've been down there. What a great facility. And the feedback I get from people from out of town who come to visit our senior center is, wow, this is the best. This is the best. The people are great. The administration always takes care of everything so well. It's a clean, neat facility. So I guess I just wanted to say to you and your committee, your administrators, what a great job. We are so blessed to have such a wonderful facility in town. And I'll leave you with that.
Thank you. And with all due respect to Councilor Parisi, even if I am the Miracle Grow, there's a lot of watering, a lot of sunshine, and a lot of the plants were already planted when I got there. The building, the funding, the board of directors that's so supportive, the volunteers, and of course, I just have the greatest staff in the world. I don't want to name any particular names, but I think some of you know many of our staff members down there. They work really hard, and we're all getting older too, by the way. I haven't had to resort to my cheaters yet, but yeah, we're all aging in place too. But it's rewarding work because we are helping people that really need it, and almost every day. And I said this today. I had a lady come up to me today and thank me because her husband passed away recently, and we send cards, condolences to any of our members who passed away, and she thanked me for that, and she said how she needs to come down there, and geez, I got choked up and I lost my train of thought. But I shared with her, and I share with my staff all the time, even though we lose people, we comfort ourselves in knowing that for the time that we had, we provided them with a quality of life that they otherwise would not have had. They're not sitting home in front of the TV. They're not lonely. They're not bored. They're not sickly. They're vital. They're competing against each other in Wii bowling and cards and pool and everything you can think of. And they're going on trips, and they're enjoying life for as long as they can, as long as they're able to live it, and as long as we can help them a little bit to keep doing it a little bit longer. So I consider it a privilege to be able to do the work that we're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to take on your Wii bowling because I've got about 6 300 games in that. I'd like to take on your champion down there.
I've got a lady in mind.
Okay, we'll work that out. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'm glad we could help you fill your social calendar, Council Sullivan.
I've got to wait 5 more years.
Gentlemen, thank you for your presentation, for answering our questions, and your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, councilors.
Up next is Masters Manna.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Evening. If you could let us know who you are for the record.
Yes, thank you. Ian Brooks, acting chairman of Masters Manna as of today.
Congratulations.
Cheryl Trzynski, CEO of Masters Manna.
Garris Perez, core volunteer and potential board member.
Thank you. Do you have any introductory remarks for us?
Yes, please. I've lived in Wallingford with our family for 23 years and very happily. We've graduated 3 students in our family well through Lyman Hall, and in the last few years it's clear with an empty nest now it's time to give back. So I've been behind the scenes in Masters Manna for the last couple of years, and as you're finding, things are moving a little more quickly now. So
that's good to know.
Thank you. Our request for $45,000 in the budget is based on the work that we're doing and the strategic goals that we are looking to achieve as we look to stabilize our position in Wallingford especially. I will say that something that's quite remarkable is that the numbers in Wallingford are steadily increasing year on year, and the numbers of identifiable shoppers from Meriden is dropping. And right now, as of this year, Meriden is just a couple ahead, so the trend is looking towards Wallingford services are going to exceed Meriden as early as this year and certainly next year.
Okay. Would you like to field some questions?
Absolutely.
Questions, comments from councilors. Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Nice
Good evening.
to see you all again. Page 2 of your backup, the top part, I take it to be there's an apportionment of the space that you have and what it's used for. It's not. It's not a traditional budget. I can't read it like that. Is there a different document that is your budget?
No.
Okay.
Basically, at the bottom, there are totals by category, and we've been asked by foundations, by individual donors, to give a breakdown of what the numbers look like by area. So we're trying, and we're going to continue the process of taking the amount of space, the allocation of space, the cost of each program, and that's going to be part of our development process in the future, where everyone wants to see specifics of what they're supporting. And development, fundraising is an important part of what we need to do in order to stabilize our position in Wallingford.
Okay, so looking at the document that appears to be the only document like a budget, the bottom of page 1 indicates potential or anticipated revenue for, well, first of all, what calendar year are you on?
This is calendar year 2014.
Okay, so you're a January 1 calendar.
Yes, correct.
So for the year of 2014, income of $273,700.
That's the hope, but of course, as most of our income is based on foundation giving and discretionary giving, we have to be flexible in what we expect because there's no guarantee what we're going to get. And as you know, our funding in recent years has been erratic, and that's caused problems in the operation of our finances. And whilst we've been able to stabilize the services we've given, it's a difficult situation right now.
I respect all of that, but looking at, of the $273,000, there's only 2 that don't have an entry next to them that says pending. So I guess the Napier Foundation, that's in the bank, or
correct.
Maybe you haven't received it yet, but you can rely upon that. So
Yes.
that's 10 grand. And then we have this Meriden Foundation, which I believe is a charitable arm of the Meriden Rotary Club. And that's
And this is, by the way, the first time that they've given us money, so we are working to develop that as far as one can with the foundation into more regular donations.
Sure. So that's $15,000. And then we have the town of Wallingford, which it says pending at the $45,000, but we know under the mayor's budget, the appropriation is, I believe, $22,000. The rest of them are pending up in the air.
Can I address that for a moment?
Sure.
Okay. We've also applied for a grant through CUNO Foundation for $15,000.
That's on here.
Right, and we believe that that will be matched because of relationship between Napier Foundation, CUNO Foundation, and Meriden Foundation.
Okay.
We've also been approached by Wallingford, Walmart, the local Walmart here. They have a state grant, and Evelyn Smiles is on the committee that reviews grants. She asked me specifically to submit a grant for operating costs. That grant was $72,000. We've also applied for a grant through Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, a 3-year grant for $85,000, and I think we'll probably get a favorable outcome from that as well.
Okay, but looking at what you can actually
touch
and bet the horses on, you've got $62,000.
Correct.
And I threw in the $15,000 at the end. Then looking at your potential, based upon this budget, expenses, it's $230,000, which means your budget on paper is minus $170,000.
It is every year.
Okay.
Perhaps I can help you with the additional efforts we're going to be making in the coming year of how we address that. Fundraising, development of money is dependent on the board, and we are looking to bring in 3 new board members at our next meeting. Gareth here is one of them, Jeanette, who's sitting behind, is another, and they're bringing in strategic skills which will enable us to stabilize what we're doing and work to bring in new money. The 3rd member of the board potential that we're going to bring in is a fundraiser down at Knights of Columbus. And I'm pleased to say that we're finding a particularly good niche in young people who are looking to come and help us on a stable basis. And we all are going to wonder, well, what does young mean? I'm going to say in their 30s, and that's exciting. So they bring a lot of energy and a lot of modern skills and structure to what we do, Gareth in particular.
One thing I do also want to share regarding the income at Masters Manna, looking at the grants, absolutely it falls short of what our budget needs are. I do have to share that we have exceptionally generous investors in the town of Wallingford, Cheshire, Meriden, and all the surrounding communities that I believe last year donated over $130,000.
Okay. Based upon this budget, if you were to get all of the income that on your wish list, it's showing a surplus of $40,000.
Praise God.
Yes, I'd like to address that. You may recall that last year, Masters Manna was in the position of looking at and seeing a building on South Broad Street, which is 2.5 times the size that we have now, at a similar rent. And because back then our balance sheet didn't meet the landlord's requirements, we lost it. And to go from our 6,100 square feet to the 16,000 odd that we can fully see ourselves using with a similar rent was a huge loss. So therefore, what we have to do is build our base, and we're looking to, when we get consolidated with our new board members, start a building fund, and we also need to make sure that we have enough in regular operating so that we can manage our existing expenses as you see here. And of course, as any prudent organization, have a little extra for a rainy day when something breaks or something needs to be fixed, etc.
Which, that was where I was going next, but you brought up something else in the meantime. Well, I just wanted to point out, there's been other locations that Masters Manna has talked about moving to. Beaumont Road.
Correct.
Cherry Street Station.
Correct.
That.
We have been looking at this with a good commercial realtor, with other resources, and for one reason or another, either location, quality, commercial terms, it's been difficult to qualify these places even before people look at our balance sheet. So having learned from the South Broad Street experience, we need to be in a better position before we can actually look to be accepted at a qualified location.
And you understand it's a little disconcerting to me when, you know, we're giving out $20,000 and I'm reading in the newspaper how you're going to close.
You read we would close if we did not raise the funds to stay viable, which we were able to do.
I understand.
And I have to say, it's through the resources of the community and the hard work that so many people put in that one way or another we make this work. And as Cheryl was telling me before I came on the board, well, we don't make sense on paper, but every year we're delivering more services, more program, helping more people. And the trend that we're going through, particularly in Wallingford, where year on year for 4 years in a row, the numbers are increasing.
I understand, and I don't want to be the business organizer here, but at some point, I think somebody's got to say, you know, we shouldn't grow and expand projects. We need to think about the core so that we can remain viable.
Can I ask you what program you think we've expanded or added?
Transportation.
Transportation ceased in October of last year because we could not afford it. However, we have always done transportation. However, we did get the vehicles from the Red Cross. We did not get the promised funding, but we have always, since 2006, done transportation.
And understanding that transportation is a necessary service, but it's difficult to fund, we have worked with other nonprofits just in the last few weeks, and we're talking to a local foundation who funds us now, who likes the possibility of that, and they're enthusiastically looking at it. And the initiative comes from them, not a request from us.
I respect that, and it appears that once we got into financial straits, we pulled back and said, you know, we shouldn't be doing that, and that's the prudent thing to do. So, has there been an audit of your books?
Yes, for the last 3 years. So if you go to guidestar.com, you'll find the audits and you'll find the 990s from 2007 on.
I've been to GuideStar, and the audits aren't on there, but...
Well, if you want copies, I'll be more than happy to deliver them to your office tomorrow morning.
And we recently passed an IRS audit as well.
Only because I get a lot of complaints. There's a lot of turnover on the board.
Then can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Why do you not come to the source and talk to us about it?
I'm not throwing out any allegations.
I'm just asking, if you have all these questions, are you capably able to answer them? Do you have all the accurate current information?
I haven't made any assumptions, accusations, or anything. I'm just looking if there's oversight.
There is, quite a bit. And if you want the audits, I will have them in your office tomorrow morning.
The, how much money is in reserves?
We have less than $6,000 in our checkbook, period.
When last year's budget at the end of the year, that would have ended in December, that's the $6,000 you put it into reserves, or is that just running?
No, that's money that's come in this year. The only money we had last year that came in, Napier Foundation gave us $10,000 that was designated specifically for 3 months' worth of rent. And that funding is now gone. The money that's currently in our checkbook is funds that have come in 2014.
And do you recall the year before how much there was in reserves?
I think we were close to 20,000. And again, a lot of that was designated through foundations specifically for general operating costs going into the new year.
I did get a hold of the 990 for, well, it was filed 2011. It doesn't indicate what period it's for, so that was an omission, but it indicates contributions and grants of $1.3 million.
Correct.
And I would expect that a portion of that is financial contribution and a portion of that is donations.
Correct.
And am I correct in assuming that food donations, which you get from Connecticut Food Bank, I recall?
We do not get food donations from Connecticut Food Bank. We are contracted with Connecticut Food Bank to distribute food that we have had to apply for. There's certain funding that's available through TFAP, which is FEMA funding. We have to meet certain requirements in order to be able to have access to that food and distribute the food. We do have a membership fee that we pay with that. The majority of the food that we get comes from donations through Stop and Shop, ShopRite, Walmart, Thurston's Foods, Edible Arrangements, Elizabeth's Bakery, who else? BJ's.
Bakeries.
Mm-hmm.
Bakery, you guys were talking
Bakeries,
okay.
Yes.
There's various bakeries around town.
And last year we had over 560,000 pounds of food donated that did not come from Connecticut Food Bank.
Okay. That's all I had at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions or comments from councilors? Hearing none, thank you for your time. Thank you for your work.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your consideration. Appreciate it.
I am told that we have no questions for the Center Street Cemetery. Therefore, next is animal control. Page 33 in your books. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself to us.
I'm Katie Ellers, the Animal Control Officer here.
Katie, do you have any introductory remarks?
I wasn't quite prepared for that, so I apologize.
It's your first time.
Yes, it is my first time. It's a little terrifying. I was hired in late September of 2013, so it's been a whirlwind, to say the least. But it's been fantastic, and I just want to thank the community and the town for all the support I've received. That's it.
Sounds like it's going well.
It is going excellent.
Mr. Chairman, Katie comes to us with a banking background, a appreciation of record keeping, handling money properly, and a great love of animals. So she's well qualified.
Thank you. I must say, I liked your page on Facebook, the Animal Control Shelter page, and I think it's a tremendous resource for keeping your population in residence from growing. It seems to me that you're adopting pets out on a weekly, if not more than weekly basis.
Thank you.
So that's important work. Nobody wants to hear that the same dog has been in the shelter for years, and I think that you've contributed to moving pets into good homes.
Thank you.
With that, questions from councilors? Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Katie. I hope that you like animals, but I hope that you do something about the feral cats. And don't be terrified. He's not that scary. So I just wanted to ask you about the dryer. the capital expenditure, you asked for a dryer and it wasn't granted by the mayor. Can you just tell us about that?
We received a dryer.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
We appropriated it a couple weeks ago.
She needed it, if I may, Councilman, she had demonstrated a need for it now because the thing was dying, if I recall. So that was on a prior council agenda. Maybe this, was it this agenda or the last agenda?
It was on the
It was
consent
very,
agenda.
very recently.
It was the
That's
item
why-
before the one we pulled
Two
for
meetings
Councilor
ago.
Tessa's request, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
That's why I was distracted by the.
Yeah, there was a claim that I approved it because I use it for my own clothing, but that's not true.
We can tell.
I don't take it down there.
That's all I had.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For me.
Councilor Testa, you're up. Make it good.
I just wanted to compliment you on the job you're doing. I know, I've come down a couple times to take a look at some of the animals, but you're very kind to show me around, and just really pleased. And I'm especially pleased with the way you've reached out to the community through social media and otherwise. We've got a lot of fans out there, and it seems to be working pretty well. Seems to get a lot of responses. So I'm very, very happy to see how things are going, and I just wanted to thank you for being gracious to me when I visited.
Thank you.
Before you were at the shelter, my wife and I adopted our 2 dogs from there. So.
That's awesome.
And they're pretty special. They're our only children, and they're all over my Facebook page.
I'll check it out.
But thank you very much for the. Oh, Councilor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had, you owe the library $17 from Hannah, the beagle we adopted last year, ate one of my son's library books. So on behalf of the animal shelter, I have to recuse myself from the donation that I made on behalf to Beth's cause for the damages that were irreparably beyond repair.
Okay.
So I do want to just put that on the public record that I am indelibly biased on that particular exercise, and my apologies to Beth for leaving the book unattended. I didn't realize the leaping ability of your animals, so I commend you for all of the agility training you apparently have done. Thank you.
I don't think we've ever had the library connected to the animal control shelter before. So thank you for that first, Councilor Mansfield. Yes, thank you. I think you're all set.
Okay.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you very much.
Next is the library. Page 24 in your books. Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening. For the record and the benefit of the television viewing public, please remind us who you are.
I'm Jane Fisher. I'm the library director.
Beth Brooks, board member.
And I'm Bob Carmody. I serve on the Board of Managers and serve as treasurer for the board. And in the back is Sonara McPhail, who is the president of the board.
Thank you. Do you have any introductory remarks for us?
Just a couple of comments before we start. On behalf of the full board, I think we're justifiably proud of the Wallingford Library. And our library is the envy of many other libraries in the state, if not most libraries in the state. I was speaking to a director of another library in our region who described the Wallingford Library as the big sister library, and she described it that way because our library sets such an example for others to follow. We're very aware that our success has only been possible because of the support and the relationship that we've had with the council and the administration over many years, and we're very grateful for that support. We're presenting a budget tonight that seeks town funding of $2,846,109, which is a 1.5% increase over what we asked for last year. And Jane has just a couple of other highlights that she would like to point out on the budget.
So we're different, though no more important than many of the organizations that have been presenting tonight. We're a larger organization. We currently have 21 full-time employees and 34 part-time employees. Last year we had over 474,000 people come through the door of our library, so needless to say, it's an incredibly busy place. We are one of the few libraries in the state that's implemented radio frequency identification technology. Some of you have been in to see that. It allows us to automate our services in a new way, including a pretty nifty sorter that actually takes returns and sorts them on a conveyor belt, so we get them back on the shelves more quickly and off patrons' records more quickly. That actual sorter was a gift from a corporate foundation, and we were selected to receive that gift because of the volume that we do. It's not something that would be necessary in a smaller library. So we're really above average in many ways in kind of all of the measures that libraries look at to show their success. Per capita borrowing per service hours, visits per capita, program attendance. We are the #1 sharer of materials in the state, which means that we share our materials with libraries from other towns throughout the state. We're #1. We're also the #1 borrower, which is kind of reassuring because it tells us that we're not simply bleeding our tax dollars out to other towns, but that our residents are taking full advantage. And really, Wallingford is a reading community, which I think we should all be very proud of. We actually are incredibly efficient. Our wage expenditures as a percentage of operating expenses is less than other towns of similar size and less than the statewide average. And the town tax dollars that go to the library are less than 2% of tax dollars. So it really makes us a pretty incredible return on investment. Just a couple more comments. I wanted to mention a few things new in this particular budget. We did an extensive community survey last year as part of our strategic plan. And one of the things we heard over and over and over is a desire by our residents to have some weekend service on Saturdays or on weekends during the summer. We've historically been closed on weekends in July and August. And for some families, it really is the only time they can come to the library. So what we've proposed doing is opening a half a day on Saturdays in July and August. That was something that I sold to the staff. They're accustomed to having Saturdays off, but they understand that our community really wants some weekend service in the summer. That doesn't have a tremendous impact on the budget because at the same time we would be open on those Saturday hours, we'll actually propose closing at 6 p.m. on Fridays. We've been open till 9 o'clock year-round on Fridays. Summer is the busiest time of the library by any stretch, but Friday evenings in the summer, it is the quietest of the time. So we think that that's a good trade-off for our community. We are in this budget seeking a 2.5% wage increase for our staff. Our wages generally lag behind other libraries, and while we've been able to hire successfully during this tough economy, I don't think it's in the library's best interest to let our wage levels lag. But one thing I do want to say is despite the 2.5 increase for staff, the overall increase in wage expense, salary expense in this library is only 1.66% increase. So we've been able to be efficient. We've had some changes in our population that has actually created some of our salaries to go down. And the sorter, the RFID technology I mentioned that allows us to be more efficient, will allow us to reduce our workload a little bit, which we're doing by attrition. We have said that we're not looking to do layoffs as a result, but we've been doing it by attrition and we'll continue to do that. So the overall increase in salary expenses less is 1.6%, which we think is, in this day and age, shows that we're really working to run the library as efficiently as possible. We're continuing to monitor fuel costs. We did an installation of a very efficient gas burner at the main library, which has saved us some money, and we're continuing to see our fuel costs, and you'll notice in the budget actually going down, and you think, what organization is seeing less? We've been a little reluctant. We've kind of wanted to study the the patterns over a few years. We also did some efficiency improvements at Yalesville. So we feel confident with a few years' data now and actually projecting a decrease in our fuel and utilities costs. And then the last thing I'd like to emphasize is many of you know we run a used bookstore at the library. Some of you probably donated materials to the used bookstore. We have not received any town money from the library to be open on Sundays. We're open on Sundays from January through April. Something our community really values. Those are the busy days for us. We use the proceeds from that bookseller, from our used bookstore, to pay for the Sunday hours. And that is something we do want to continue next winter, though you won't see funds for that in the budget that you have before you. Thank you.
Thank you. You're certainly doing a lot with what you have to work with, and you're pretty technologically advanced. I certainly don't hope that you become a museum because of e-readers. I'm certainly resistant to those, even though I am technologically current. With that, questions from councilors. I see Councilor Letourneau.
Good evening. Good to see you all. I'm glad you touched upon the winter hours, because I know we talked about it last year, and it was really iffy at last year's budget time whether you were going to be able to do it or not. So I'm glad that everything worked out well for that, because if there's one comment that I get quite a bit from residents, it's the opening of Sundays, how they really enjoy it in the wintertime.
We go year to year not knowing if that'll be funded, but we've actually been very fortunate. The bookseller has been very successful.
Yeah.
And that's provided a stream of funding for us, because we're open 16 Sundays, I think.
15 or 16, depending on holidays.
Sundays, and it's about $1,000 a Sunday to be open.
Good, good. Is there any one contributing factor in this year's budget with the raise, the difference between last year's and this year's? You had given a percentage. I think it was 1-point-something percent.
It's 1.5% increase over last year's request, and I think Jane touched on it. It's primarily our biggest expense, as you might imagine, is salaries. It's staffing expense, and so I think she indicated overall the increase there is 1.6%. So that's really where most of the increase is, and the things that flow with salaries.
Insurances and sure, understood. Okay, that's good. I just wanted to make that comment on the Sunday. That's just so important for the town, especially in the wintertime. So I think at some point, if don't be afraid to come back to us if the funding falls a little short and see what we can do. But so far it seems to be working. You just got to keep your fingers crossed that you sell enough stuff in the bookstore. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Councilor Testa.
Thank you. Good evening. Just a minor question. You may have covered this in your opening remarks, and if so, I apologize. But I just noticed that there's just an $11,000 difference in between your request and what was approved. And was that for an individual item that was decided not to be purchased, or how was that?
No, that was a reflection of the health insurance change that we talked about the other night.
Good enough?
So it's give or take. So that reflects the amounts that Jane
That's all I needed. I just wasn't sure if it was a cut of a particular thing and what that thing was. I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the pleasure, I think it was yesterday, of touring the library as part of the Wallingford Rotary Club, and to see all of these great new things. And I'll tell you that I did something there that I haven't done in about 20 years, and I got myself a new library card. And I was very impressed by not only what a library card can do you inside the building, but outside the building as well, and I intend to use it. Just a little story. A few weeks ago, I was dealing with a family, husband and wife. They have 3 kids, and they were looking to buy a house. And it was in Milford, and their closing fell apart. and we're sitting in the office, and I start to tell them about Wallingford, you know, and they're talking about how do we make this decision. I say, go down the street and look at our library. I got a call yesterday, and they're buying a house in Wallingford. We do have a jewel of a library, and nobody can say anything different, really. There was a topic last year that we talked about, and that was reserves. Where are we on reserves this year?
We consider what we call our contingency funds reserves, and right now in that, the balance as of this is as of December 31st, 13, it was at $492,337.
Is that in cash?
Well, it's close to cash. They're in right now either a money market account or laddered certificates of deposit, short term.
Okay, that's exactly what, I mean, even short term, it might make more sense, you know, to do something longer term for a portion of that, and then maybe this budget can come down even more. I looked at your backup, very impressive. There was a word that's missing though, and it begins with a Y. Didn't see a lot of Yalesville in there. Well, you know, our regular library is a jewel. Why do we still have the Yalesville Library? And I understand there was a focus group and all that stuff, but it just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
I think it's a topic that came up, and there was not a focus group as much as an outpouring of support to keep the Yalesville Library open. As we talked about last year, we did expend some money. If the decision was, and it seemed to be the community's decision, that actually happened before my time, but it seemed to be the community's decision to keep Yalesville for the time being. It is very difficult to close a branch library in any community. But I understand the other point of view, that we have a branch that serves a small portion of the entire town. Frankly, it doesn't cost a lot of money to operate the Yalesville Library. So given the outpouring of community support to keep the library open, it's open 2.5 days a week. We've got the utility costs there humming so efficiently, staffed with, you know, one, occasionally two people in the building, a shared materials budget. It is not a big portion of this budget, and it seems to make the community happy to have it.
So on an annual basis, because it isn't called out here, how much on average does it take to run the Yalesville Library?
I can prepare that information for you. I'd rather do that than guesstimate at it.
However, an estimate, I believe, from years past was in the neighborhood of $30,000.
30 to 35,000, I think.
Do we currently have a program where we deliver books to seniors that are like shut-ins?
We don't, though it is something in our community survey that came up as a potential need, and I think it's something we want to take a look at doing.
I'll tell you, as a teenager, I used to do that.
Yeah?
They used to call me from the library, you know, Jane Smith, she wants this book, come down and get it. I'd go to the house and I'd bring it. It might be something that you'd want to partner with the high schools to do, or maybe it makes some sense if you could consider closing Yalesville to get a bus instead, you know, where you could bring people to the Wallingford Library and deliver books to shut-ins and seniors, and I think that would be of assistance to the community. I'm glad to hear about the Sundays, but it seemed like a portion of the Sundays. Are there still some Sundays that you are anticipating to be closed?
We're only open on Sundays from January through April.
Okay, and I think we talked about last year, the rest of the year being open on Sundays, and I think there was an identifiable need. I'm getting a yes and a no.
No, I think the feeling, and Jane spearheaded this, was previously in the summer, we were closed the whole weekend. And we felt it was important to provide some time during the weekend throughout the year, and Saturday seemed to make the most sense from a start. As Jane said, we walk a fine line in trying to provide as much service as possible, but then also managing the staff, being able to staff all of those days year-round. And we felt the best way to start, at least right now, was to be open on Saturdays during the summer.
And I'm just balancing, you know, Yalesville being open, the main library being open on Sunday. I mean, you have staff at Yalesville that you're using during the week that you could transfer over to the regular library. I don't know, but I'm just...
I know we commented on this last year when we had a public forum on what options might be available for Yalesville. One of the options in our mind was to consider closing it. It was eye-opening to us, the amount of feedback we got, support for keeping that open.
Of course you're going to get that support, though.
Yeah, but it was surprising to us the extent of the support that we.
I mean, I used to live on Brownstone Road as a kid. I used to read on that floor of that library as a kid almost every day.
It's much nicer now.
I'm sure it is. But, you know, I understand, and it's a part of my heart, and, you know, even when they closed Yalesville Elementary School, that was, you know, part of my past. But we're looking at finances here. And of course, if, you know, you go to a neighborhood and say, you know, what do you think about us closing the library? Very few people are going to say, yeah. You know, they're all going to say no. So, I don't know. I'm just looking at all the finances. And anyway, that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from councilors? I think you're all set.
Thank you. Councilor Fishbein, we hope you support with your new card the library the way the mayor does. He frequently pays fines to us for late returns.
I have a Nook. It turns off the book automatically.
All right. Up next is the Registrar of Voters. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
For the record and the benefit of the public watching television, please let us know who you are, or remind us, rather.
Ladies first.
Thank you, Chad. Betty Torrey, Registrar of Voters.
Chet Miller, Registrar of Voters.
Good evening. Do you have any introductory comments?
Good evening.
Questions or comments from councilors? Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. I just wanted to ask, or I am asking, about line 54325. Seems to be quite an increase, 300% increase from $2,500 last year to $9,000 this year. What do you attribute that to?
The Secretary of State's office has, since the inception of the new scan machines, picked up the tab for their maintenance through HAVA funds from the federal government. They have run out, so now they are turning that piece of expense back to the town. The contract for 20 machines is a cost of $8,000. So we took some of the $2,500 that we were keeping because of the cost of brand new memory chips is $400 a piece if they ever have to be replaced, and we reduced it to just $1,000 and added it to the $8,000 to come up with a total of $9,000, and we're keeping our fingers crossed.
Okay, just that you're taking a portion of what was appropriated last year, using it for this year to reduce this coming year's budget.
No, what we're doing is in reducing, that we were asked to look at everything that we could, if we could reduce. We had money in that $2,500, which we've had every year, for maintenance of other equipment, but also if there's a need to buy memory cards. That's a $400 item. If we had to buy 10 of them, that would be $4,000. We only have $2,500 in that budget. So what we're saying is we are going to take a shot and say we're only going to continue in that budget $1,000 for other maintenance plus the memory cards, because the full maintenance of the machines alone with inspection and everything is $8,000. You have to go one-time contract.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other
Mr.
questions?
Chairman, yeah, just one comment on that. It's $8,000 here, and in the town clerk's budget, we have $11,000 for ballots. So there's $20,000 per year in order to be using the electronic voting.
Optical scan machines.
Don't get them started.
Don't get me started on expenses.
Don't get them started.
Too late. All right, any other questions or comments from councilors? Hearing none, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Department of Health is up next. And that is our final budget for the evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Please remind us who you are.
Eloise Hazelwood, Director of Health.
Bless you.
Do you have any introductory remarks or comments?
No, I think I'll mimic Chet.
Follow his leadership by example.
Yes.
Okay. Questions from councilors? We have Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. When I first looked at your budget, I started highlighting things, and then I looked at the subsequent pages. And I want to thank you for page 4 of the backup, which I think it's the only department of this small nature that actually broke out each of the changes and why, and it answered all of my questions, and because of that, I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Well, alrighty then. Any other questions or comments from councilors?
Thank you.
You did an excellent job, Eloise.
Thank you. Although I want to pitch the hands-free CPR on May 27th. Not hands-free, hands only.
Hands only. Yep. We've all received that email, and I'm sure we'll promote the event.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, I'll entertain the magic motion.
Move we adjourn.
Second. I think somewhere in there was a motion to adjourn in a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. The meeting's adjourned.